A New Hope, Nier Chapter 65b. You can read all of Azazyel's fan fiction stories by subscribing to patreon.com/Azazyel. Goodwitch then took out the tapping system we were given to knock a hole in the trees and explained how the metal used to make the spike to send into the tree was huntsman weapon grade, so we didn't need to worry about trying to be gentle with it as we sent it into the tree, as the trees within the Everfall Forest were far more durable than normal trees. So she actually pointed out Nora having her Warhammer to be the designated piledriver, as it were. I was looking out the window after Goodwitch finished her lecture and I saw our landing zone was already being swarmed with Grim that heard the bullhead's loud engines. I swiftly pointed this out to my and Blake's teams, so we readied ourselves, unfolding our weapons and making sure they were loaded in case our landing consisted of us being thrown out of the bullhead and being made to clear the large crowd of Grim. And I was proven half right. A volley of missiles and the miniguns attached to the bullhead shredded and blew up the Grim beneath us. Then Goodwitch's voice came out through the intercom as the back hatch of the bullhead opened up as the plane hovered mostly in place above the battlefield. .0. Freshmen, jump out of the bullhead and clear out a landing zone. Goodwitch ordered and my team locked gazes, and then with a smile, I dashed out of the bullhead as Pyrrha helped Jean get out of her bindings that kept her motion sickness away while Ruby and Weiss were hot on my heels. I wreathed myself with flames as I was plummeting towards the ground, and then I created a massive explosion as the flames I held so tight to my body violently erupted when I collided with the ground, sending any Grim that was close to me flying away as they quickly faded into black smoke that my guardian began absorbing. The first to land beside on the scorched ground was Ruby, and then the others followed as the Reaper almost gagged at the extreme temperatures that were radiating from both me and the ground. Ruby, you and Weiss take up supporting roles as Pyrrha and Yang will directly fight the Grim. The rest of you protect Ruby and Weiss so they can deal with the Grim from a distance. I yelled as I ducked under a swipe from the large Ursa Grim. With the rest of the other teams landing down in their own ways, we swiftly killed off the surrounding Grim, and I felt my guardian swell with the unprocessed essence from the Grim. The bullhead then landed with a couple of the beacon staff members taking out a few dozen large jars with Goodwitch escorting them. Students, each of you is to return with a full jar of sap, and there is also a reserve jar for each team to have their own private stash of the sap for your own personal use. Do not come to the med bay thinking the sap makes good lubricant, as it most certainly does not. Goodwitch yelled, giving the teams with both boys and girls dirty looks. I facepalmed as Weiss and Blake blushed heavily and verbally denied ever thinking about using the sap as such a thing. While Young had to shush Ruby as she loudly asked what we would use the sap between boys and girls. Nora on the other hand giggled evilly and looked over at Ren before she loudly asked as the bullhead finally shut off its engines. What if we lick it all off? Goodwitch didn't even deign to answer, just rolling her eyes, and if the jar hit Nora in the chest as she levitated all the jars to the students, well, that must have been a mistake. Our teams then moved a bit away from the bullhead's landing zone and found a group of trees that were nice and close together, so we didn't need to wander around to check the taps. Alright, guys, make sure to conserve your ammo. We are going to be here for like 6 hours. I said as I used the pommel of Virtuous Contract to smash my tap into the tree and put the jar I was given into the tree. Considering how these trees basically dripped a little less than a gallon an hour and these jars were like 5-gallon glass jars, then we were going to be a while, and I knew Weiss and Ruby with their fighting styles probably only carried enough sniper rounds and dust to refuel their weapons a couple of times. My baby Crescent Rose is a great many, great things. But sniper ammo is heavy. Ruby puffed up proudly about to defend her weapon, but then could only deflate as she realized she only was carrying 4 extra magazines on her. Which was more than fair normally as a more melee-focused fighter, but in a long drawn-out fight 50 bullets won't last in a battle with a couple hundred or more Grim. Maybe try a space-expanded pack to hold them. I thought as I remembered how that fashion-obsessed leader of the coffee team had an extremely heavy if normal-looking purse that could somehow mecha shift into a minigun of all things. Ruby raised her hand as if to give me a lecture, but Yang cut her off after she finished literally punching her tap into the tree she chooses. Hey, my little Ruby can't handle the extra weight of such a contraption with her fighting style, and the more weight she is carrying, the more aura her semblances use. Yang! Don't tell them my weaknesses. Ruby cried out, using her semblance to land a powerful kick to Yang's shins that made her hop about, cursing in pain as Ruby's steel-toe boots still hurt even with Yang using her aura to block the blow. I couldn't help but think, what if that kick and the aura used to block it was the deciding factor that saved her life should a great number of Grim come, and lo and behold I saw Blake stiffen and look deeper into the forest. Looks like we got company, I said, taking out my sword with my guardian appearing behind me with its arms folded over its chest. From out of the forest came a large pack of several dozen Beowulfs, and from the forefront was a heavily armored specimen of an alpha Beowulf that was more than 3 times the size of its brethren. As the Grimm approached us, I could hear gunfire erupting throughout the forest as the other students began fighting their own Grimm, which agitated our own into sprinting forward. The sounds of the battle, and when seeing us instantly fixated on our teams. I stomped my foot on the ground, and the ground hardened with several stone spikes that grew out of the ground in a circular formation around us, so the Beowulfs had to throw themselves over and into the sharpened stone stakes. Wren and Blake began using their rather smaller caliber guns attached to their weapons to begin killing the Grimm that got over my impromptu fortification, while I jumped over my fortification and began to advance on the alpha Beowulf. The alpha howled so hard the air began to shake, and then the lesser Beowulf parted around me as they ran towards my teammates, while the alpha stood on its back legs and strode towards me as what little intelligence he had screamed that all of his packmates were nothing to me and only he, the alpha, could defeat me. I dashed forward as the alpha closed in, using my nascent semblance to create a portal that allowed me to land a powerful lightning-coated fist straight into the armored chest of the Beowulf alpha, and it was blasted back by the exploding lightning as I cupped my sore hand as its armor withstood my magic. "Alright, so alphas are definitely not a trash mob like their normal variant," I muttered as the alpha unsteadily stood back up with a prominent blackened mark on its chest with 4 dots on it where my knuckles messed with the flow of lightning. "After the field trip, I will have a great surprise on its way."